again, and welcome to another episode of Ara and Friends. Today we're going to be in the lab with Megan and Tommy, and we're going to start off by just talking about some probiotic methods. Megan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Megan Hicks. I have been in the industry of this for 13 years. I started off as a lab assistant, worked my way up to be a lab director, and we've been with Ara now for 2 years.
All right. And Tommy?
Yeah, I'm Tommy Geisendorfer. I've been in the industry for about 6 years now. Started out as an analyst as well, and then worked my way into quality, and now I'm the quality manager of our lab.
We're going to be talking about probiotics today. There's a lot of methods. Probiotics are very challenging ingredients in a raw material and single strains. They work, relatively well. There's a lot of methods in the compendia for these. Then when they go into blends, then they become more challenging with a co-ingredient. Sometimes there's interferences, or if there's antimicrobial properties in like a botanical, that causes an interference. So we're working with challenging blends a lot of times. So there's a lot of method development work that goes into these. And I just thought we would have overview maybe the steps that we use in the methods, and then, how we figure out which method to select. We're going to talk to Megan and Tommy a little bit about some of these different methods we use. Megan, did you have an overview or anything for us?
Yeah, so each probiotic does have their own method that kind of helps their growth of the colonies. So there's some methods that take MRS, some have just peptone, some take saline, and then there's different augers they grow on, and there's MRS is our go-to auger for most probiotics, but we also have a GYE auger we use, and even an SABC auger we use. And so then they have rehydration steps that are all different. Some have 30-minute rehydration in MRS broth at room temperature. And then you have your spores that like heat. So you do a heat shock at 75 degrees Celsius. And then we have some that you don't have any rehydration. You just dilute and stomach or blend and then plate. So every probiotic is very different. There's a lot of methods in the compendial now that help us, and we can try to figure out what's fitting for some of these blends that are more problematic to growing on both methods. And then there's also times that we have to deal with matrix issues of samples solidifying while they are in the rehydration steps. We have to modify our dilutions, the initial dilution, to make sure the sample stays in a solution to be able to draw up the correct amount to make your next dilution. So there's a lot of challenges. And then we have vendor methods.
Yes. So whenever someone sends us a probiotic sample, and they, a lot of times, the customer really doesn't know how to direct us or how to tell us, this is the method we need. So it's a little bit for us, it's a research, it's a project. So whenever I'll email the customer back, and I'll say, we need a lot more information. And you can see, Megan went over just how many, choices and the different growth medias, and trying to encourage these things to grow at their best. So anyway, that's why this is, it's a little tricky. So that's why I thought we'd just do a podcast. And I know Tommy may have some thoughts too. They both see a lot of different probiotics. So Tommy, did you have some thoughts on some of these samples we see?
Yeah, one thing we see from a lot of customers is that not everyone knows how to spec them correctly. We have these huge blends that have 15 different probiotic strains in them. And then you want to do one overarching method that gets them all inclusively. That just doesn't necessarily happen every time. So we either have to run 3 or 4 separate methods, or we have to get guidance from the customer to what they actually want it to be spec'd at, and kind of help them with the process. And then we do spike studies all the time, because sometimes these pros are kind of experiments. We don't necessarily know what botanicals or co-ingredients might interfere with their growth or inhibit anything. And so, like I say, every pro is a little different. We don't know until we try. So that's just kind of the name of the game with probiotics.
Tommy hit on one thing where we sometimes have to, get this 50 billion with this blend, and some of them grow anaerobic and some of the probiotics would grow aerobic. And so that would be a good way to split the count, is because you see overlapping growth on all the aerobic uh, spores mostly. The probiotics would grow aerobically, kind of all grow together, and it's hard to distinguish on an enumeration method. And then the same with the anaerobic methods. You've got, lactobacillus, and you've got bifidobacteria, and these different probiotics that all grow anaerobically, and they are going to cross grow. So, choosing multiple methods on the same aerobic, we'd only want to choose one aerobic method or one anaerobic method. So that's the challenge that we get into, is trying to figure out which methods are the best to, get the best growth for that blend. Do you guys have any other thoughts or something I've left out?
I think also probiotics, they all have different storage conditions, and a lot of our customers don't have proper storage, and that can impact them from being stable. Not all probiotics are shelf life stable, unfortunately. So we find that they don't refrigerate, some that need to be. So that's another challenge we find too.
Yes. So I just thought, we're going to take the camera into the lab, and so we'll see, actually behind the scenes, and how we do some plating, do some pouring of the dilutions, the different pipetting steps, and then very interesting, like, the last video we had was the basically negative micro. Well, this is totally opposite. This is, we're going to be counting you'll see lots of growth, and the plates are interesting, and sometimes they're difficult to count. So we'll kind of look at some different plates and how they grow out. There's some Petrifilm methods. So we're going to see a lot of different ways that we grow probiotics out. So hopefully this will be interesting, and you'll learn a lot about behind the scenes and how the lab actually, grows out these enumeration methods. Let's go into the lab. Okay, we're in the lab with Megan. And Megan, tell us what you're working on.
Yes, I'm doing a probiotic assay, and it is on a blend from a capsule. And we are adding our MRS broth in here, and we'll stomach it next for 2 minutes, and then let it rehydrate for 30 minutes. And then it'll take another stomaching for 2 minutes, and then we'll plate our solutions that we've picked for triplicate. This one's going to do 10 to the 6 through 10 to the 8. So we just pulled it out of the stomacher. It's nice and homogenized, and we're going to make our cereal dilutions. And your bag is with 11 grams of sample and 99 mils of MRS. That's your 10 to the 1. And then your first bottle is going to be like 10 to the 3, and you go so on until you get to the desired dilutions to be plated.
Okay. And I think you told us what we were going to do before you stomached, but kind of remind us the dilutions you're doing on these.
This one's going to be a 7 and an 8 is going to be where I hope to get counts on. The 10 to the 7, 10 to the 8.
Okay.
And we do them in triplicates, and then we average.
So you're going to do 3 dilutions, and so you've got 9 plates you're going to be plating.
Yes. These are peptone bottles that we use for this method. All methods have their own dilutants, so you have to be method specific.
And then when you are going to count them, do you average those 3 plates?
Yeah, so you have to have at least 25 colonies on a plate for this method to be usable. So it's 25 colonies to 250 colonies. And if you have within that range, you can average the 3 plates and use that for a result.
Okay. So now once you've pipetted, now what are you going to do?
I'm going to go get my auger. I'm going to plate a sterility with our peptone that we made just to confirm that it was sterile. And I'll go get my MRS auger and pour it, and then we put it in an anaerobic chamber for 72 hours in an incubator.
Okay.
Alright, this is our MRS auger that we're going to use for this assay. It does not have all cysteine, just MRS, so we'll pour our sterilities and our 3 dilutions in triplicate and let them solidify before we put them in their anaerobic chamber. You swirl them a little to make sure that they get separate it out into the agar well. We'll let those solidify and then we'll pack them up in their anaerobic chamber.
All right, Megan, so now you've got the anaerobic chamber ready to go, or?
Yeah, so we're gonna pack them up. We'll put our plates in, they've solidified. So we stack them in little stacks in here. And then we have our little gas packs here that take the oxygen out for us, the CO2. One thing. And then we have an anaerobic detector strip just to make it just a second check to make sure there was no oxygen in there. Just wet it a little bit with some DI. And then we put this on, make sure our seal is secured. And then we lock it down and it will go into the incubator for 72 hours.
All right, I'm excited to see when it comes out what it looks like. Well, we're in the lab with Tommy and he's getting ready to read some plates or show us, maybe these are red, he's just going to show us what he did. Tommy, you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, so basically these are just probiotic plates after 3 days of incubation anaerobically at 37 degrees. So what we do is we will plate these at 3 separate dilutions to try to get to catch the count between 250 and 25 colonies. So obviously 6, that's very overgrown. It's going to be too many to count, so that's going to be over 250 for sure just by glancing at it. These 2 plates here are going to be pretty good plates. We get counts of 134 and 136. Turn around here, you can see the colonies a little bit. So that's going to be our 10 to the 7th plate. And our 10 to the 8th plates match up pretty well with that. So here we have 15 colonies. You can see. So what we'll do, typically we'll have something like this. If we have 3 dilutions, we'll have one that's too numerous to count, one that's a little bit below our counting range, and one's kind of right in the middle. And so what we'll do, we'll take our average of however many plates we do, and then put that into our calculation, whether it be per cap, per gram, what have you, and just report that to the customer.
So Tommy, you're getting ready to read?
Yeah, these are PQ film that we use for the Bacillus subtilis method. It's one of 2 alternate plating types. You can do them on TSA, but a lot of matrices seem to work better on the Petrifilm, so that's what we tend to go with, unless it's specified by the customer. So we're looking at here is just, red to pink colonies, and I'll count these out, and then put them into, our calculations and get a count.
And then how many dilutions did you do on these?
That'd be 2 dilutions for these. That's pretty typical. Okay, so we have a 7 here, which is obviously overgrown, and then we'll have an 8, which is more of our target dilution, which that's definitely countable. So we'll be counting the 8 for this, and this will be considered too numerous to count. Okay, so this is day 2 of Bacillus colossi, however you like to say it. It was incubated in a 40 ±2 incubator for 48 hours, and this is the end result. So we've got kind of a mixture of really small colonies and kind of these larger ones. So when we count these things, these large colonies still, that's only 1 colony, so that's just kind of the different morphology we have growing here.
Well, that was a really very interesting watching Megan and Tommy in the lab. And I thought I would just kind of overview some of the things that you saw in the video, and we would talk about, maybe some of the methods just a little bit more, as an overview. But we do aerobic and anaerobic probiotic methods. So some examples on the anaerobic were some of those agar plates, and some of the methods that we run are for strains like Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus salivarius, bifidobacteria. Those kind of strains, we add like a 5% cysteine HCl. So if you see a method that says, add L-cysteine, that's what they're talking about. And these are like USP FCC methods. Then strains, other strains like Lactobacillus bulgaricus, Lactobacillus plantarum, rhamnosus, Lactobacillus brevis, and casei, those use the very, very similar method. It's anaerobic, but you don't add the L-cysteine nutrient. Then you also saw Tommy, I was reading out some Petrifilm plates, and the Petrifilm, those are some tests called Bacillus subtilis, and they grow aerobically. So they aren't in that anaerobic chamber that Megan showed you when she added the gas packs. These are just grown in air temperature in the incubator. So those Petrifilms were Bacillus subtilis, and then we also grow aerobic air agar plates for Bacillus coagulans. So there's all kinds of augers and methods and specific media we use to, nutrients that those certain probiotics like to grow in. And so we try to use their ideal conditions. You can refer to the Council on Responsible Nutrition and the IPA probiotic best practices. And that link is here so you can see where that is. Thanks for letting us see inside the lab and all the different things, the different steps, and even the anaerobic chambers and the incubation, and then reading them out. And this was a great educational episode, and I really appreciate you guys letting us bother you so we could see what you're doing. Until next time, talk to you guys later.